Final Fantasy is here, and we're going over the 10 must-have Commander cards from the set. It's all the best cards.
I'm Mia, and I wish Chan would make more music.
I'm BZ. Sometimes I have a hard time thinking of puns, but I think they always come out pretty well. We're the Nitpicking Nerds, sponsored by Card Kingdom. If you want to get any stuff to your door that's Magic products, I would trust Card Kingdom the most. Very reliable, very fast, very reasonably priced. Get it to your house, get the cards, be happier, but primarily, also, secondarily, use the link that we have, because that lets them know that we sent you.
You can pre-order Final Fantasy singles there. You can pre-order a Final Fantasy sealed product, or anything else that has come out in the last 30 years for Magic you can get on Card Kingdom. So you should go, use our link, tell them we sent you. That's our face. Very much thank you. We're also sponsored by Dragon Shield, best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
If you use the code
Nerds
at checkout, you can save 5% of your real money tax dollars on your entire order, which includes very sparkly sleeves in those jewel colors. That's amethyst, that's amber, that's ruby, that's pink diamond. There's a lot more, and I can't think of all the names.
And real money tax dollars, they're worth saving. They really are. We're sponsored by Moxfield later. You heard about them now for a second, but then you're going to get totally blindsided when we punch you in the face with an ad, in some amount of time. Feel free to try to guess, but you're not going to be right. And we have Patreon. If you want to support nerds, see extra nerd stuff that you can't see on the main Nerds channel, go over there. We appreciate it. It's like throwing us a little tip, and then we give you something in return. Everybody's happy. So, best cards from Final Fantasy, huh? We've heard about this set for a while. It's finally here. I'm very excited. There's a lot. There's of new cards.
So many in here.
We are going to be covering all of the Final Fantasy Commander stuff, the Final Fantasy main set, and even some of the other weird, supplementary things like the starter decks. I don't think that actually factored in, but we were looking at all of that stuff for this. Everything Final Fantasy. These are your top 10 cards for Commander.
There's so many new cards from the precons themselves, from the main set, from the starter kits. There are so many new cards within this set. There was a lot to comb through. And I feel like if your favorite didn't make the list of our honorable mentions or the top 10, maybe it was a little bit too specific. I feel like there's so many cool payoffs that we just couldn't talk about because they were specific for certain archetypes, certain payoffs, but they're so cool overall.
Yeah, we're talking about the most playable, the most powerful. So that's going to, your 3-color Artifacts Commander is probably not going to make it on here. We are also talking about all of these in the 99. Mm-hmm. We are also not talking about reprints because that's not that interesting. Dark Confidant already exists. We know how good it is. Let's talk about the new stuff, starting with honorable mentions. Honestly, we have a lot because this set is so fun, but we're going to get through them before we do the top 10.
Okay, my first one is Poo Poo UFO. Or maybe it's Pew Pew? I don't know. I didn't play that much Final Fantasy.
I don't know which one I like better. Those are both great names.
Overall, it's a 2-mana 0/4 that will let you tap it to put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. It is an upgraded version of Walking Atlas, which is a card that we like to play when we have decks that can draw a lot of cards, but it's hard to ramp, such as in your blue-red decks when you're just drawing a bunch of cards. I think that this is an upgraded version, and though it's not going to fit the top 10, I really wanted to shout it out because I think it's playable in a lot of decks.
I think it's pretty good for a budget. What's your next one?
My next one is Delivery Moogle. He's a little guy that will search your library or graveyard for an artifact 2 CMC or less. I think this is pretty interesting considering it can go in your graveyard too. If you've accidentally milled over something or the thing that you want has already died, you can still get it as long as it hasn't been exiled. I think that's very awesome, the fact that you can just look at both. Usually it's just only from the library.
It's sort of like a combination of Trinket Mage and Sanctum Gargoyle. I think it's pretty cool, reasonably statted. I think a lot of these honorable mentions also fall into really cool budget cards, so they're not necessarily going to make the top 10 list, but they are really interesting. I like Summon Leviathan. We weren't too high on the summons, but something to keep in mind, especially with this one, is that if you flicker any summon, they come back and they re-trigger Chapter 1. In this case, you bounce everything. So even if you're not playing a Leviathan deck, I don't care about that. What if it's just, here's a creature that enters and bounces everything for only 6? That feels to me unique and aggressively costed, so I like it.
I feel like, personally, I'm not a big fan of the summons because they're very susceptible to creature-based removal, and the fact that with board wipes, we are looking usually at the 2 to 4 range for bringing all the creatures away. I mean, it is in blue, so
it's reusable, yeah.
Yeah, it is reusable, but I'm not a big fan of these, so it's definitely your honorable mention. What about your next one?
My other one that I like a lot is the Darkness Crystal. I think there's a lot going on here. I thought maybe this should have been top 10, so I guess, we'll battle over that over the next couple weeks if this card actually ends up being good, but I think it has a lot of good static effects. It's like a little bit of a Meat Hook Massacre combined with a little bit of the Dalthy Voidwalker, then there's a little bit of if you have nothing better to do, it's got the 6 mana ability, and it's got a little bit of Jet Medallion. For 4 mana, I want to try this out.
I don't think it's a bad card in any means necessary, but I think it might be a tad bit overcosted at 4 mana. And when we're looking at the top 10, there are so many cards that have come out in the set. I just think our top 10 ranks above it.
Top 10's pretty strong. What is your next one?
Ignis is my next one. He's a 3 mana dude, and he looks at the top 6, and you put a land out. This is just like Elvish Rejuvenator, only he has more upside. He has an extra ability that's gravy. The only downside is that he has to be played in Simic decks, so you need at least 2 colors in your deck, and that makes him a little bit tougher to play.
Yeah, but he is just better than Elvish Rejuvenator and some of those other cards, just with one more color. My last one, probably, I think this was the number 11 card that got bumped down, Una Hope of Spira. This seems really aggressively costed. It seems like a really solid card for Enchantress decks. They're always playing Replenish and that kind of thing to get back everything, so their graveyard is full. They can fill graveyards, no problem. When you can get back like a 6-drop with this, just right away, and leave Una in play as a recursive, like a continuous threat, that seems really strong.
I will be very afraid of these in the Enchantress decks, but because of the fact that it is 2 colors, because it's pretty specific, unlike the other top 10 that we have, it's the number 11. You heard it here first.
So that brings us to the actual top 10, our picks for the strongest cards in the set. We're going to start with number 10. It's Gaius Van Baelsar. Let me know if I got that right. 2 black for a 3/2. When he enters, choose one. Each player sacrifices a creature token. Each player sacrifices a non-token creature, or each player sacrifices an enchantment. More expensive than Playcrafter, but it gives you the like Farika's Libation / Shieldred's Edict level of you get a choice.
I think that this is a very awesome card. Yes, it's a little bit more expensive, but if we're already playing things like Ravenous Troops where we're like, oh yeah, 1 for 1 at 4 mana, I feel like when we're talking about 4 mana in today's day and age, we need a little bit more choice. We need a few more targets at that point. And yeah, these are not actual targets per se, but you have a very big selection. Sure, someone might have a Rhystic Study out, and then it's like, okay, well, I'll choose Enchantment because that's very annoying if they don't have anything else. Maybe you just choose Creature Tokens. Someone has some very annoying ones, and it's like, okay, well, I have no creature tokens, so I don't have to sack anything, and only you guys do. And then if it's just non-token creatures, sure, you could sack this guy, you could sack something else. It doesn't really matter. I think this is very versatile, and if you can flicker it or if you can reanimate it, I think you can control the board very easily. You know we love our 3 or 4 for 1 removal.
All the same upside as a Ravenous Chupacabra, where you flicker it and you just keep killing things, and this one can take more things out at once, but you don't get the luxury of choosing. You have to hope that they don't have enough to make it a tough choice for them, or just assume that you're happy with whatever you can get. I think this is going to play out like 50% of the time. It's going to be the same as Playcrafter, but the other 50% of the time, you're getting things that Playcrafter doesn't do, like bypassing stupid tokens and getting rid of the real thing they play, like their commander, or black cards are not doing this. Getting rid of their enchantments, taking out multiple enchantments at once on a reasonably costed, 4 mana thing. I think that's going to come up a decent amount, and I like this, I think, more than Feed the Swarm. I think most of the time when there's a problematic enchantment, it's the only thing. It's the only one.
I think I'm going to be putting this in Mahadi. It's an uncommon, which is the restriction for that deck, no rares. But that means it's going to be very easy to get your hands on. And then also, because of that, you want to kill multiple creatures at once in your turn. And this will definitely wipe out at least a couple, if not all 4, if you want to get your own triggers too. I think that this is an awesome one. And it's going to be great for those Rakdos or just mono black sacrifice decks.
That's the other thing to note. If you don't have a creature with one of those qualities, like if you don't have a token or you don't have an enchantment and you pick those, you don't have to sack anything. There's no downside. Playcrafter, if for whatever reason you didn't have a creature, would make you discard. They're all like symmetrical. But if you don't have an enchantment, you can't sacrifice an enchantment, which is pretty cool to note. What is our number 9?
Our number 9 is the Regalia. It's 4 mana for a 4/4 vehicle with haste. When it attacks, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a land card. You put that land onto the battlefield tapped and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. It also has Crew 1. You can't play this on an empty board. However, basically any creature that you have can crew it, and you can attack with it immediately to get that land.
I'm pretty excited by this. This feels like one of those colorless ramp spells that I am going to play in more decks, not just budget. This seems really cool. There's obvious synergies with artifacts in general or vehicles. Some decks are going to love that, but I think this sees play outside of that, where if you can play this on turn 4, you're going to be able to crew it, hit somebody. Even on turn 4, 5, 6, you're going to be able to hit somebody with a 4/4. I don't think that's that unreasonable. So in that scenario, you're going to get another land next turn. and you just don't have to invest any more mana. You just have to crew it again. I think that's super strong.
I think so too, and I love the fact that it's not a basic. You can just pick any land off the top, and especially if you're like us and you're packing your decks with a bunch of like MDFCs and utility lands and that sort of thing, you're skipping over the spells, keeping those in your deck for when you need them again, and then you can find the actual lands that you really want, whether that be multiple colors, whether that be a utility land that you want to get something from later on, and I think that this is very good for that. We're already playing things like Sad Robot, which has some sort of this effect on it. Maybe you don't get the card out of it, but you get this repeated effect of getting the land.
Plus, this thing's going to survive board wipes, so if you connect once or, force a chump block once with it, then it just sort of sits in play and you go, ooh, I can't attack with it. Wait till a board wipe or play one yourself, then crew it, get in again. And I think with this card, what's going to happen is I'm going to hit once, feel pretty okay about it. Then I go to my next turn, and the worst case scenario is, oh no, it's going to die. Okay, whatever, it's an attack trigger. It's not a combat damage to a player trigger. Just send it into its death, and then it probably dies, and I get 2 lands out of it.
I also think that a 4/4 is a pretty good stat line for this too.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to die that easily. Maybe they'll have to sack a couple things to throw in front of it to make sure it dies. Or maybe that, their commander is a, 3/4 or whatever, or even a 4/4, and it's like, well, I'm not going to trade my commander for this thing that's getting you a land, and it'll stick around a little bit longer than you'd actually think.
Yeah, no one in their right mind is trading their 4/4 commander for this card, so you're going to be able to jam with it a lot of the time, and I think that's what's going to make it pretty sweet. Number 8. It's a card you may have seen before, because it was our preview card, one of them anyway. It's Louis Sua's Sacrifice. Blue for an instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a legendary creature or pay 2. Counter target activated ability, triggered ability, or, more importantly, non-creature spell. We get a 1 mana negate, a very, very strong ability. This, when you can sacrifice something, it's better than Swan Song, and that card's fantastic. It's better than an offer you can't refuse, and that card's fantastic. The thing is, can your deck reliably sacrifice legendary creatures? You always have your commander as a break glass in case of emergency, but can you get a few extra ones like Fibblethip in there to make this great?
Honestly, we saw in the comments, all of you guys were like, this is a Yuriko card, and I love that. That is going to be one of the best decks for this card. Also, Rogue Rack, as we mentioned earlier. Any of these cheap commanders that you can replay pretty easily, or, you want it to die, maybe you want to bring it back or something. Either way, I am very, very excited for this because I love the counter target activate ability and triggered ability line on here. I just feel like counterspells can delve into that a little bit more, but when we get counterspells that can delve into that, they're usually pretty specific or they're overcosted, and we don't really want to be paying for that, especially in more high-powered environments. But I think that if you have partner commanders, if you're able to get your commander out cheaply, if you're able to bring it back pretty cheaply, then this is going to be great in there.
Or if you have creatures like the scientist Simic guy who gets a land who's basically just a Farhaven Elf variant that are legendary. Sutina's legendary, Fibblethip's legendary, Lauren of the Third Path. Random legends I'm not afraid to throw away with this card. If you want to see more, go check out our video where we go pretty in-depth on all these cards. But if you want to put these cards in your deck and you haven't built your deck online, then I would recommend going to Moxfield. That's the best way, best place, best website to build your deck on.
Moxfield has all of the decks that anyone's ever built on it, and that's a ton. If you want to see all of the decks that we've ever built, whether that be retired decks we're still currently playing, maybe decks that we're still building and we forgot to put on unlisted, you can see all of those. And you can type in the search bar the cards. If you want to see where this card is, you can check it out and it'll bring up all the decks that we have that card in.
And Moxfield, if you're looking for a new slogan, I think Mia just nailed it. Moxfield has all of the decks that have ever been built on it.
I think it's great.
That doesn't sum it up.
I just don't recognize any other website.
What are they? I think they're just
redacted.
We just call them redacted. Yeah. Number 7, we got the Fire Crystal. 2 red for an artifact. And red spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Creatures you control have haste. And for 4 red and tap this, create a token that's a copy of target creature you control. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. And I was, for a second, my heart skipped a beat because I was like, wait, it doesn't give the token haste? It literally just says creatures you control have haste. So there's no need to put that on there. This one, I think, is the best of the crystals, or at least the most widely playable one, right?
I think so too. As we've seen in the past, whether that be Fires of Yavimaya or Rising of the Day or Hammer of Perforos, the going rate for hasty creatures is 3 mana. This is 1 extra, sure, but you're getting the 1 reduction off all of your other red spells, which if you're in mono red or a heavy red deck, that is going to pay itself off almost immediately. And then if you have nothing, absolutely nothing better to do with your mana, you can use that 6 mana ability on the bottom, but I'm not usually counting that. I think that's just gravy at that point.
I think you have to look at all these crystals like the last mode is if I have nothing better to do, or if I'm going to somehow get tremendous value or win the game or kill somebody, then you can use it. That's fine. But I'm just looking at what if it was Ruby Medallion plus Hammer of Perforos. Okay, I would definitely play that card. I'm excited to try this. I really want to get in there. I don't know if I have a deck for it right now because my mono red deck has a lot of 1-drops, and this card is not very good with 1-drops. But if you're playing like Gruul Stompy, you should try this card out.
I might try it in Purphoros. I think it would be pretty cool there.
Totally.
Up next is number 6. It is an iconic character. It's Cloud, Midgar Mercenary. White for a 2/1. When he enters, search your library for an equipment card, reveal it, put it in your hand, and then shuffle. As long as he's equipped, if an ability of Cloud or an equipment attached to it triggers an additional time. I mean, we love cheap tutors to begin with. When he enters, you just find your best equipment. If you can blink him or bring him back or whatever, you can get that multiple times. And then also, if he's equipped, he gets multiple triggers off of him. And there are so many good triggers on equipments, whether that's like, making things with like Reaver Cleaver, though we don't usually recommend that one. Whether you're doing stuff like Sword of the Animist, etc., etc., I think you have a lot of options with that secondary ability.
Yeah, I mean, Open the Armory is a pretty sweet card. And if you're playing an equipment deck, this is just the same thing, but they give you a creature to equip, and it copies its abilities, and it's so good. This card is fantastic. I think if you really want to get janky, one thing I was thinking of this is Blade of Selves. So you equip Blade of Selves to Cloud, and then you attack, and you get 4 clouds that all die, and you get to go find 4 more equipments. That maybe is overkill, but I want to try something like that. This makes for a great commander, but we are talking about it in the 99, and I think the fact that it's just this toolbox card that's good early, it's good late, it feels like Stoneforge Mystic levels of awesome.
Wait, wouldn't you not get 4? Wouldn't you get 6?
Oh yeah, because you get
opponents. Double.
Yeah, what am I talking about? You would get 6 clouds.
There's so many awesome equipments. I feel like with every single Universes Beyond, there always needs to be some sort of equipment. Remember, like Codsworth and stuff, and Dogmeat and that sort. We always need the Naya equipment one in the Universes Beyond.
They love
series.
it. They can't get enough of it, and I'm happy with Cloud. Cloud seems really sweet. I think early you're gonna get Sword of the Animist. You're gonna get Bitterthorn, Nissa's Animist. You're gonna probably get something that accelerates your mana. You can also get Skullclamp, and you can just kill Cloud and just draw 4 cards. That already seems good. I think I would consider this card outside of just heavy equipment decks. If you've got a mono white deck, I have this, and I'm thinking of it just now on the fly. I have Stoneforge Mystic in a mono white deck that only has like 3 equipment in it. It's got like a Sword of Fire and Ice, a Skullclamp, and a Sword of the Animist. That I think alone is enough to just put Cloud in your deck. If you have an early game, have a ramp, a card draw, and a removal equipment, get this card in, and it's going to be fantastic, I think.
The question is, are you going to be replacing Stoneforge for Cloud?
I think I'm going to add it in and play both. But depending on the equipments that you have, Cloud might just be better than Stoneforge Mystic.
I think so too. I mean, if you're mono white, the white cost doesn't matter to you to begin with because it's going to be so easy to get those pips. And then not only are you getting tutors for the equipment, you're also just getting extra effects from it. That is so powerful in of itself.
I like the level 0 of this is a no-duh, amazing equipment card, but I think, like we're saying, this has legs in non-equipment decks. You just need to be playing, I think, 3 equipment, and I'm ready to go with Cloud, especially when I think about Skullclamp. Mono white, if you're struggling with card draw, throw a second copy of Skullclamp in your deck that specifically has 1 toughness and will draw you 4 cards when you equip it.
I think that is a very convenient stat line overall.
Cloud knows what he wants, what we want from him.
Up next is number 5. It's going to be the Adventure Towns. I'm going to have BZ read these, but they are adventures stapled onto lands.
Yeah, so you can play them on the front side, or the regular, it's all the front side. You can play them as a land that enters tapped and makes one of the 5 colors. But there's also an expensive adventure that, if you draw it in the late game, means I didn't draw a land, I drew a spell, and even on top of that, I'll still go ahead and play this land afterwards. So we're going to go read all of them at once and then talk about what we think, because we're going to lump them together. Any one of them could kind of fill this slot, but there are better ones and worse ones. Ishgard, 3 white for a sorcery. Return 2 creatures and enchantments or enchantments from your graveyard to your hand. Jadur is 4 blue sorcery. Target opponent mills half their library rounded down. Midgar is 2 and a black sorcery. You may sacrifice an artifact or a creature. If you do, draw 2 cards. Lindbloom is 2 and a red. The only instant, not sure why that's the case, but it makes a 0/1 black wizard that says when you cast a non-creature spell, ping each opponent for 1 damage. And then Xanarkand is 4 green sorcery. You get a 1/1 colorless hero. Then you put a +1/+1 counter on it for each land you control. So none of these stand out as fantastic or busted or even 100% free rolls in a deck. The entering tapped is a cost. We love playing MDFCs, and these do feel similar. And it feels like you can kind of jam as many of the pay 3 life enter untapped MDFCs in your deck and not suffer too many consequences. but you can't put 87 tapped MDFCs in your deck and not start to be slowed down a little. So there's some cost. There's some things to consider. I do think in a one-color deck, though, I'm playing all these. I'm just going to do it. They're just lands with upside for the most part.
I'm a little bit pickier about that than you are. I think that I would play some of these and not all of these. I'll just go over rankings real quick because we were alluding to that to begin with.
Yeah.
I think my least favorite is the blue one, that's Jador, because 6 mana, target opponent mills half their library, rounded down. In any average blue deck, you're probably not going to want to do that. And especially, you're not going to want to be paying 6 mana for it. But maybe if you have a deck that really relies on mill, this can work in your favor.
This is the exception, and I'm glad we're talking about this one first. I would not play this in my 1 and 2 color decks unless I had a good reason. This isn't a free roll. This is, if you're playing Bruvok, it's a free roll, and you take it from the bulk bin and you put it in your deck and it's fantastic. But most of the time, we talk about, what am I going to cast Kabir Takedown? Oh, I don't know, like 50-50, 50% land, 50% spell. But what is Jador, like 99.9% land?
Tapped land.
That's not offering you much versatility. I can't think of a time when I'm not playing dedicated mill where I would want to mill half of somebody's library. That's just how you give them access to more cards. If I could start every game having milled half my library, I would do it.
And it's also because of the fact that it's not even each opponent for 6 mana. It's target opponent. So it's not like you're going to be copying that. You're going to be paying 6 mana to only target one opponent. And if I'm playing mill, because I have a deck that revolves on card draw and mill and a lot of that sort of thing, I still am not playing it there, not just because it's 4 colors. Even if we shrunk that down to 3 or 2, I wouldn't be playing it there because the rate is so bad for milling half their library for only 1/4 of the players.
I will say, for the rest of these, though, for the other 4, I think you can play them in 1 and 2 color decks. I would heavily consider them.
I think so.
What about the rest of your rankings?
My 4th best one, which means second worst one, you could say, is the green one. It's 4 green, create a 1/1 hero, put a 1/1 counter on for each land you control. It's a vanilla at that point, and I'm not paying 6 mana usually for a vanilla, let's say 8/8 at that point.
Yeah, sometimes you want a big boy, but not often.
It's just not that great of a rate, especially since it's sorcery speed. All these, by the way, are sorcery speed except for the red one, as we mentioned earlier. So it's not like you're gonna spring this on anyone where it's like, attack you with my gigantic 5/5 commander. It's like, oh boom, I have an 8/8. No, you're not gonna do that. You're gonna have to sit, pay the 6, and then wait.
Yeah, when you have nothing better to do, it is there. It does affect the board. What's your third?
I think my third one, I'm kind of looking at them right now. It's Ishgard. It's the white one that says 3 white. Return 2 creatures / enchantments from graveyard to hand. Now we're getting into playable territory where I'm like, okay, that's fine because there's always going to be creatures that died in board wipes. If I'm running a heavy enchantment deck, maybe there's a few of those in there. But I like the fact that at 5 mana, this isn't something that is out of the realm of something I might do. Sure, it's a little bit high costed, but at that point, if I'm playing mono white or white plus, maybe a Selesnya deck, and I'm able to get a little bit more recursion, that's where I'm starting to think about these decks.
Definitely has Bala Ged recovery vibes. It's worse. It's just an overcosted thing, but the fact that it's overcosted is mitigated by, in the early game, I'm not casting this. I'm playing the land side and I'm happy about it. In the late game, when I top deck this, when I have a bunch of mana, I'm going to be thrilled for a 5 mana 2-for-1 to get back my 2 best things. I think the next best one for me, the second best one is probably Midgar, 2 and a black, sack a dude, draw 2. That's basically just divination. If you're a black deck, you're going to have extra disposable creatures, and if you can't possibly come up with a disposable creature, don't put this in your deck.
Oh my gosh, I think that this is the best one overall. I think that this is the one where I'd be playing this the most because when we're talking about drawing 2 cards, that's usually the Knight's Whispers type territory, or what's it called?
It's like a Read the
Knight's
Bones,
Whispers, Sign in Blood, etc. And a little bit more, you're getting the Read the Bones, whatever, but stapled on a land too. And we're not usually playing Read the Bones and that sort, but it's also not stapled onto a land. And
right,
I think that when you need a little bit more card draw, I would put the black one over the red one. And I just personally, at least,
that's fair.
The red one.
Yeah. So with this one, Village Rites, man, it's just looking worse and worse as I keep getting better alternatives to it. But my favorite one is probably Lindblom, and Mia's second favorite one. It's 2 and a red. It's the instant, which I think is a bump. Having to not do this on your main phase to be able to hold up other stuff is a bonus, and it just makes a little Firebrand Archer thing that just kind of pings them. I think this is the one that decks will be happy to play. If you're a Spellslinger deck, you're actively oh man, my land can be an instant or sorcery and trigger all my stuff. Sweet. Super happy to play that. I think notably, if this is going to be your land drop for turn, you kind of have to play it at sorcery speed, though.
Yeah, I think that when it comes to decks that can like run it more. I feel like the black Midgar one is going to be in more decks overall because it's more versatile, but I think the decks that want it, Lindblum, they'll be more excited for Lindblum.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe Midgar is the best one. We went through all our opinions on them. I think all the towns are pretty sweet, except for the blue one. Everything that's not blue, look to play it. If you have 10 commander decks, I promise you, you're going to be playing like 7 or 8 of these cards. I'm serious. You really should be heavily considering the adventure towns. They are not as universally playable and, you know, busted in the sense that all my commander decks are going to start playing them like the MH3 MDFCs, but they're a few steps down and you should consider them.
I think they have options and they're typed if you ever start to care about towns or whatever, or maybe it's just like, you know, if you have X different types among lands. I don't know if that exists, but...
Hey, you know, play a bounce land?
Maybe.
Put it back to your hand, adventure again?
I like that. There's options. Number 4, though, is a card that I'm very excited about from the precons, and it's one that I genuinely want to test in some of my decks. It's Yuna's Decision. 3 and a green for a sorcery, and you choose one. You can either continue the pilgrimage, which is sack a creature. If you do, draw a card. Then you can put a creature and / or a land card from your hand onto the battlefield, which is the mode that you're probably going to be choosing most of the time, or find another way. Return 1 or 2 target permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. The extra mode is just extra, but I do like the versatility of it. Most of the time, I'm going to be sacking some mana draw that I don't need anymore. I'm going to be drawing a card and then putting a land and a big boy from my hand onto the field. For 4 mana, I think that is a great deal.
I was looking for cards that did something similar to this, and it was really hard to find them. Some of the closest you get is like Dramatic Entrance, which is heavily restricted and more expensive. There's also like Selvala Stampede, which is only kind of similar. It's a bigger effect that costs more mana. Same with Smuggler's Surprise. You have to pay 6 mana to cheat out 2 things, and most of the time you're adding to that with the what is that called? Can you name the mechanic from Outlaws? Spree. With Spree, you add more stuff to it. Good call on that. I was thinking Strive, which is almost the same thing but totally different.
It's very close because there's magic. Whichever one is in here that's tiered.
Tiered.
Yeah, there's so many options. But I also like this because the land doesn't come in tapped.
Well, yeah, that's what I was saying that I totally trailed off with. I was surprised that there wasn't a 4-mana version of this. What we usually see at 4 mana is like Elvish Piper, and there's a werewolf that's kind of similar where they have summoning sickness and they tap to do this, and I have not been thrilled with those at all. I think those cards are very mediocre. I don't like waiting for things. This is just, you don't know what I'm going to cheat in. I'm just going to do it. If it resolves, I stack a creature. It's not like I'm targeting anything. There's no chance to blow me out. And like you said, 90% of the time, you're going to get an 8-drop on turn 3 or 4.
Yeah, you're getting an untapped land from it. You're getting a creature that you are definitely cheating mana for because you're paying, you're definitely only playing this when you have a big boy in hand. And say you only have a big boy in hand and then this card, and it will still give you a card, so maybe you find a land and get that too. And then if you just happen to play it after a board wipe, you can get your best things back from the graveyard if you really need that mode. I like the fact that this is not dead if you have an empty hand.
That's what I really want to see on my modal cards, is they are good in wildly different situations. This is good when you are pressing the advantage, when you are now becoming the threat or you are the threat already. And if you're recovering and you need gas and you just need to fill your hand with stuff and you're out of big boys, this gives you something to do. And I love this card for that. I think initially we underrated it. And as we were making the top 10, it kept moving up on the list. Well, I guess our script, it's moving down, but it's moving closer to number 1. And we were like, yeah, this is a number 4 card.
I really want to be playing this somewhere. I think if my Selvala deck was a little bit less competitive, I would be putting it there. If I had like a lower bracket 4, high bracket 3 Selvala deck, I would be putting it there because I think that this will just cheat mana a lot of the time. I think it's so cool.
Honestly, I think you should probably still consider
Maybe.
it.
I mean, I'm definitely open to it. I want to play this somewhere, and I think there are so many options. Maybe I'll even put it there.
Yeah, bracket 4 Selvala, I think this could hang. I really think it could hang with that.
Maybe I'll have to
deck.
try it.
If you want to try these cards, I would recommend going to Card Kingdom to purchase them. And while you're there, use the link that we have in the description because that helps support the channel without you spending any extra money, which I think is pretty cool.
Use our link. Number 3 is Alizé Levenure. Maybe that's right. I don't know. I didn't take French. 2 and a white for a 3/2, and you partner with Alphinaud. Is that his name? Maybe.
Doesn't matter for this video.
He has First Strike, and the second spell you cast each turn costs 2 less to cast. This is a very good overall effect. This was another one that was creeping up the ranks, and it's a precon card. So if you have the Scions and Spellcraft one, that is located in that deck.
We talked about how cool this card seemed, and the more I think about it, the more I'm thinking to myself, there's not a lot of cards that do this. And this might be one of those staples that you just jam into a bunch of different decks. You throw Alizé down on turn 3, and you just get to play a Signet right away. Maybe a follow-up. I don't know. Doesn't matter. The point is you got a 2-mana discount. You get a 2-mana discount every turn as long as you're double spelling. I live for double spelling. If I'm not double spelling, I'm dead in Commander.
Yeah, especially if you have a lot of colorless spells in your decks, the heavy artifact decks, but you're also running white where you can run this. I think that you're going to be cheating so many costs because in those decks, there are already so many reducers to begin with. You know, the, what's his face? Ethereum sculptors of the world and all
artifact,
that. Yeah, and then with this, if you have a bunch of little rinky-dink artifacts like the baubles and stuff that BZ also loves to play, you can get those costs down of the artifacts like the portals to Phyrexian stuff into a very reasonable point where it slaps down and you get it a few turns early.
But again, I think this reaches far beyond any specific synergy. It's good with artifacts because you have a lot of colorless 2-mana things. But way past that, I think you can I'm going to just start throwing this in all my white decks, and I'll report back and see what happens because Alizé seems really, really good. The other thing I would make sure with this card is make sure it's the first spell you cast. If she's your second spell, feels like you may have sequenced wrong. I want the 2-mana discount. It's probably always right to play her as your first spell or just don't play her unless you have mana and you somehow like draw her. But for the most part, I want that 2-mana reduction. It is tempting since you can cast 2 spells on each turn and get the reduction. That feels like it's not going to come up a bunch. And I don't even think it needs to come up for this card to be good. Sometimes maybe you'll cast like one of the flares for free and that'll let you discount your 4-mana instant into a 2-mana instant, which you can now play. You're going to feel like a genius when that happens. For the most part, I'm looking at this as a 2-mana reduction every turn. You get this out for 4 turns, you save 8 mana.
Like a gigantic version of like a medallion.
It's the ultimate medallion. It's the double medallion.
The next one is number 2. This is going to be Traveling Chocobo. It's 2 and a green for a 3/2. You can look at the top card of your library at any time. You can play lands and cast birds from the top also. If a land or a bird you control entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, it triggers an additional time. It doesn't matter about birds. The only birds we're usually playing are, Bop to begin with or any changelings. Maybe that matters to you. The important part of this is that landfall. This will care about land. This is like the Oracle of Moldiah type effects, but you are also going to get double landfall triggers or double, land type triggers too, whether you're playing like the gain lands or surveil lands or whatever. I think that this is a very versatile card.
I'll fully admit that when I first read this card, I thought it just was a bird payoff and I skipped it. And Mia was like, oh, this card's really good. I'm like, the bird one? No, you just play lands off the top. So it's got all the initial functionality of a Courser of Crucifix or a Wayward Sawtooth or a Augur of Autumn, and there's a lot of these now that do this. I don't know if it's not as good as Oracle of Moldiah. I think that's the GOAT because it plays 2. It gives you an extra. But this is ridiculously strong for any landfall type of thing. And like you said, with random lands that just enter, like a Bojuka Bog or a Meticulous Archive that gives you an extra surveil. It's great every once in a while. Exile someone else's graveyard. I also want to point out my favorite bird, Masked Vandal, is great with this, and I think you should probably heavily consider it if you have Traveling Chocobo because it's just a bonus upside.
Yeah, I think that if you have changelings in your deck just extra, that's just, awesome at that point. That's just a little extra bump. But the main part is the land. I mean, once Scootsworm is out and then I get this out and, I do something like, Reshape the Earth, or I just have some fetches or something like that, we are going to be getting so many triggers. We're going to be going so fast at that point.
And I actually feel like a fool. So I apologize to you guys because I have not considered up until right now that this doubles your Field of the Dead zombies. So of course, this card's busted. And even if you are not a landfall dedicated deck, this could do work with those triggers. Even you have a budget deck that has Mortuary Mire in it. Mm-hmm. Hey, putting 2 creatures on top, that's pretty cool. There's something to consider with Traveling Chocobo. I don't like Courser of Crucifix. I don't like Wayfaring Sawtooth. I want a little extra. So this feels like it might give me enough extra with all these tiny little bonuses it gives me that I will play it. Of course, just so you know, if you ever get to play a land off the top of your library, that's basically drawing a card. That's like where the baseline is.
I think this is appropriately costed. I think that it's just funny with the added little bird part on it too.
So good.
But it's a landfall card, or it's a lands matters card. You could just say it like that.
Get your Gilded Goose, get your Masked Vandal, go to town, or play lands and get 85 Scootsworms and 85 zombies. But that brings us to our number 1 card, the most exciting card in the set to read, certainly, and I think the strongest. It's Sephiroth, Fabled Soldier, 2 and a black, 3/3. Whenever he enters or attacks, you can sacrifice another creature. If you do, draw a card. Sweet. Thanks, buddy. Whenever another creature dies, target opponent loses 1 and you gain 1. So we have a Blood Artist effect. If this is the 4th time this ability has resolved this turn, you transform Sephiroth. And he transforms into Sephiroth, 1-winged angel, and you do have to pull out your phone and start playing the song. He's a 5/5 with flying supernova. As this creature transforms into Sephiroth, 1-winged angel, you get an emblem with whenever a creature dies, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. They threw an emblem on something that wasn't a Planeswalker, which is something I've been waiting for years. I love emblems. I think they're awesome. I think they should all be kind of hard to get. And the thing about this one is it's kind of not that hard to get. But whenever Sephiroth attacks, you may sacrifice any number of other creatures. If you do, draw that many cards. So I like what they did where you always want to transform him if possible. He's not worse in any way on the backside. He's so much better. He draws you cards. He can fireball people by just sacking your whole board and then, turning it into new cards and hitting them for a lot of damage. But what I think makes Sephiroth so good, in addition to just being a Blood Artist that draws you cards, is Plaguecrafter, is Innocent Blood, Fleshbag Marauder, the guy we just talked about at number 10. Anything that makes each player sacrifice a creature, well, that's 4 creatures that died.
I don't know why they didn't limit this one. I think that he's awesome. Obviously, one of the chase cards of the set, because Sephiroth is one of the biggest, baddest characters of Final Fantasy. It doesn't even say non-token creatures. It's just as long as some creatures died, you're going to be able to get those effects. So maybe you sack 4 of your creatures to Altar of Dementia. You ping someone for 4, you gain 4, and then you transform him. You don't even need to play a Playcrafter type thing. If you just have a sack outlet and a couple guys hanging around, you can get that immediately. I love the fact that they're bringing back emblems. I think that's so super cool. I feel like they bring back 1 emblem per UB, because there was the Caplione Triad in the last one. I hope that's something they keep doing, because I think emblems are so cool and they're very hard to interact with at that point. And
if you work for them, they're cool.
Yeah, but you need to work for this one, but not that much. If you're in mono black or something, I feel like you will just have the resources to be able to trigger that as soon as he comes out.
It's going to be really hard to stop this from transforming. There are scenarios where you can get Sephiroth back if he dies and then just flip him again and get another emblem. If he's on the backside and you flicker him and then you flip him again, you get the emblem again, and you could potentially stack them. Let's not pretend, though, that this emblem is game over. Blood Artist does not mean you just win the game. It's really nice to know that you have that on retainer no matter what, and it's strong for you. You still have to make moves. You still have to do what your deck is here to do. It's not GG. It's just, oh man, I get this unfair advantage that none of you have access to. That's really cool. Getting it, multiple times is real good.
It's just tough to interact with emblems. I mean, what are you gonna do? It's just, at that point, you just have to say counter target triggered ability.
Louis Suave Sacrifice?
Yeah, at that point, it's just so tough to be able to interact with that emblem. You're gonna have to counter the ability itself, or you're just gonna have to counter Sephiroth before he even hits the field.
I think with this card, correct me if I'm wrong, comments, but you'd have to respond to the initial, whenever a creature dies, you have to counter that. Because it says as this creature transforms. It's not when this creature transforms. I don't even think that last one is something that you can respond to.
Ooh,
you'd have to do something before he actually transforms, because it's as this creature enters, you get a thing. That's not something you can control.
Yeah, save your removal spells for him, because this is going to be really scary when he hits the field.
Part of the problem that we like so much about Sephiroth is that on any sort of board that's developed at all, you can quite easily hold it up at instant speed with the Viscera Seer. So if they go for a proactive removal spell on it, you go sack, transform, get the emblem. Cool, he dies. That's, we'll see how many creatures I have. Maybe that's bad for me, but I'm glad to get the emblem jump started. Oh, and Flare of Malice will just trigger this too by itself. You sack one of your creatures, get rid of all theirs, flip your Sephiroth, and you're just feeling good. You got a 5/5 flyer out of it too.
But I'm sure you guys know how much we love Flare of Malice. It's just a great value. But if you want to see any more Final Fantasy stuff, including gameplay of the new precons, why don't you look right here, because we have some awesome gameplay for you.
Check it out.